Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to be joined by Patrick McGulp and John Hughes. We are here to talk all things Celtic. John, that is a cracker of a top. Can I just start off by saying that? I've never seen it looking so good. It looks like an old goalie top, though, doesn't it? Don't you think?
It
That's
does.
the vibe. It's a goalie
Yeah.
strip kind of vibe.
And
Yeah?
the one I got has long arms, and I hate long arms on a top. Can't stand long arms on a top. But the top itself was a bit unusual, and it was also in a sale. So, I think I got it for 30 quid, but it'd been on sale last year for 85. So I was like, I'll have a bit of that. I actually don't like it particularly, but everyone else seems to love it. So
It's
I mean,
improving with age.
says something about my taste, probably.
It's definitely getting better with age. And the Adidas trefoil for all our jersey perverts out there, me included, that will certainly appeal. There is lots to discuss. We are getting word in that the signing by the end of the week, Patrick, will indeed be the Manchester City 19-year-old academy graduate, Jamai Simpson-Poussey. He's a centre half. He's got 6 games under his belt for Man City's first team. Is he the guy that Brendan was talking about by the end of this week? It looks like it.
Does look that way. I don't think anyone else is close enough. End of the week is obviously fast approaching. I mean, the profile would fit with both Brendan's style, with our style, with Celtic style, and the manner in which we're signing him. As I say, the profile fits. I mean, I think he's a relatively physical player. He's obviously in the Man City mould. So you've got to assume he'll be a decent passer of the ball. If he's playing for Man City, he's got to be a half-decent defender as well. So, profile-wise, I think that's okay. It's just about the sort of age and experience that he's got. I know he's been playing, I think, Premier League 2, 6 appearances for Man City's all right, I suppose. He's obviously relatively well-rated. But it's just a question of how ready he is to come in and play important games for Celtic at 19 years of age, because I think by far and away the most important part of our season is the first half, and it's the first half I think we're all worried about. We've got the qualifier, we've got the Derby game, we're then going to have 8 European games either in the Champions League or the Europa League. If it is the Champions League, it's going to be a much tougher draw than last year. I think Carter Vickers, there was rumours about him going under the knife recently and recovering from an operation. I don't know if that's true, but he's certainly been injury prone the last 2 years. And it's a bit of a toss up whether Scales or Trusty are going to partner him this season. So there's a lot of question marks over that position, and how we're going to fare in the first half of the season. So it's going to be a big ask for the young guy. I mean, it'll be a good experience for him, with all that pressure and all that football if he does come in and play. Confirmed by Fabrizio Romano, so I think he is going to come in, and it should be interesting to see whether the option to buy is there. I think that's a big hint towards where the manager's at. If I'm being honest, if we're signing a guy who fits the mould, but we're not looking beyond the next 12 months, I would say that's a bit of a concern. Well, I mean, concern if you want Brendan to stay, which I do, and I think we all do. If you're quite happy to see him leave in 12 months, then it's not a concern. But I was hoping he was going to sign an extension, and I think this points the other direction. But we're getting a body in. Hopefully, it's of good quality. I've said previously, I think we're probably a centre half away from having a really good goalie, defence, midfield. We've got the numbers. I think we've got the quality as well in a lot of those positions. Inamuva's came in, Nigrin's came in. I think Sinisalo performed well when called upon, so decent backup. It's that front three. That's where the major surgery is needed. I mean, Jota's out until January. Shin's just came in. He has been a bit underwhelming. Kenny might be out the door. We basically don't have any right wingers under the age of 34 that we can trust and rely and call upon. So major surgery still required. And as much as we're seeded, we're at home in the second leg. We should get through that qualifier, no problem, in my opinion. We're not giving ourselves the best opportunity, which I think is a disappointing thing. And obviously, we have that game at Ibrox at the end of the month, which could become a real concern. But I think we still need a good few bodies in up top. I think, to be fair, compared to last summer, we've got the bodies in early, and Inamuva has been surprisingly good. Nigrin looks like a steal. Yamada certainly looks delighted to be here. So the signings we have made look all right, and we've got a lot of dead wood off the books. But yeah, we still need a good few first team players in, I think.
There's quite a lot there, Patrick. Absolutely. I mean, the first thing being, you could look at this signing, John, and think short-termism in relation to the loan deal when nothing to come after that 12 months. What does that say about us? What does it say about some of the other defenders who are at the club and their future as well? But you mentioned Fabrizio Romano. I told a story just the other day there at an event in Glasgow in relation to his influence. And we were at last year the award ceremony down in Spurs Stadium. And I think he's won the best influencer in the world 25 years running. And he'll probably always win it, right? He's got about 25 million followers. And we were just waiting for that to come up. And I was sitting, John, next to the guys. It was the CEO of Luton Town Football Club. I forget his name. And we were chatting about things like John Hartson. I couldn't think of much other links. I think, who else played for Luton? Didn't Joe McBride went down to Luton, I think, Luton Town? So we're chatting away and he says, Romano, he goes, he's going to obviously win this award, but I'll tell you a story about him. They were signing a player, right? And they're in this room at Luton Town's football ground and they're signing a player and all the people there, the financial director, the CEO, everybody you need to get that deal over the line, right? And before the deal had been signed and they had left the room, Romano had broken the story. And he said somebody in that room, his pocket, sent a message to Romano, who's actually broken it on his social media before the deal was announced. They hadn't even left the room. Unbelievable stuff. Yes, but he is breaking the story today, John. Are you a wee bit like Patrick? There's some reservations about it. It'd be great to get quality in, if indeed he is quality. It'd be great to get that in, but a bit short-termism, and that's something we were trying to move away from.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, you can't say that a loan is long-term thinking. A loan is stopgap. And what's he coming in for exactly? For who? So to replace who? To play first-team football? What's he coming in for? Do we need just another guy sitting on the bench? As a 19-year-old kid from Man City, is he going to be coming in and taking a place from Trusty or CCV? Unless Patrick's saying is right and CCV might be having surgery again. And that would be deeply worrying at that point. I think you've just got to get rid and cut your losses. So, no, it's not. It's a long way from ideal, but this whole situation is a long way from ideal. But the manager's own words, can be used. I mean, I think I was just Googling there while you were talking because it just occurred to me, when the manager said, was it last week, he tried to clarify the thing about him not signing guys off, but there'll be, club signings come in, we just have a look at them, then we punt them out and all the rest of it. We decide if they have a loan, there's young fellas, prospects and all the rest of it. What's Shin Yamada? He's 25.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so, where did he fall under the I haven't looked at the boy, sort of blanket of tiers of preferences? So, I mean, I don't understand how you can, be in the one hand when the fella comes in saying, we'll have a look at him and see what the crack is. And at the same time, the boy's 25 years old. He's not a prospect. He's very close to being all the player he's ever going to be. So, that I thought that was worrying, and it seemed to me that was just Brendan maybe trying to do a bit of covering of tracks. And what he said today, I found pretty worrying also. So the one he has in this week, which is he was talking about and we're talking about, but by the end of the window, he said, you will have, he's looking to get quality in to replace the quality we've lost by the end of the window, which is after the Champions League qualifier and after the Rangers game. There is no more important game in our season than the Champions League qualifier. What do you mean, the end of the window? I mean, we actually need guys in by, I think, if you're going to register more than 2 guys, they all need to be in by the 14th of this month, which is a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So, if we're not in by the 14th, you can only register 2 at the last minute prior to the actual qualifiers. So, I mean, that doesn't smack to me as if we've got a whole load of boys lined up, just, waiting to go. You don't expect obvious signs of panic, but certainly, I mean, my anxiety levels are, pretty much through the roof at this point. I just have this dreadful feeling they're going to do it again. I have just this dreadful feeling it's going to be, because it was one of the guys in the group, actually, I posted Brendan's interview, and I think it was Kevin said, was that from last year? Because it's the same interview. It's the same thing. The fact that Brendan's saying this is what we need, we already know. It doesn't matter. This is what we need. Aye, fine, Brendan, that's grand, but is it what we're going to get? We need it in by then, and we have to replace quality, have to make progress, yada, yada, yada. It's just, at this point, just hot air. It's been repeated now, coming on 3 seasons. So it's really not, you cannot expect the fans, and this is the quite insulting thing, I think, and I think it's been picked up across the board. The number of merch releases, the number of people hitting up the fans, I joke about it, I buy the merch and all the rest of it, but it is insulting when, on the back of that, the board don't appear to be prepared to do anything. It appears that, again, we're back to, has the budget been set at 3 million so that Dermot doesn't have to approve it? Are we really back to this? Are we back to this nickel and diamond? Are we back to this scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to find a diamond that everyone else has missed? Who's going to come in and progresses in the Champions League? In the Champions League, because if we're not talking about progression in the Champions League, what are we talking about? Are we really saying, that we are confirming the stereotype that it just doesn't matter? They don't care about the Champions League other than if we can scrape in and get some money. They have no interest in improving in Europe, and all they want to do is top the table in Scotland. I've said it before, I'll say it again, that's a recipe for disaster, in my view. There's only so long people will keep coming back to watch that. The European nights are the best nights of the year. And there's only so long, especially if Rangers, they're admittedly buying players faster than we are, but that doesn't mean they're any good. So, but if Rangers remain as the same sort of challenge they were last year, because I don't care what anyone says, in the press, they are cutting costs massively. So if they remain at that sort of level, well, what is it that we're watching? You're relying on, so let's say these people aren't quite as obsessed with Celtic as we are. Your casual Celtic viewer, your casual Celtic, goes to a few games, your attendance when they can, all the rest of it, wouldn't watch, pre-season games or, any other sort of friendly or anything like that. Just, I probably wouldn't either if I didn't have to talk about it. So it's that you're going to lose all of those people. This is why they want to expand. It's this constant, self-fulfilling prophecies. Do we want to expand the stadium? No, because, what, people don't come? Well, why wouldn't people come? Well, what if we're not playing well? What if we're not in Europe? Well, why wouldn't you be in Europe? Why wouldn't you be playing well? Because we don't invest in the team. Why haven't you invested in the team? Because we're cowards. And we're sitting on £100 million of what should be bravery, and instead, we don't have the vision to see the way forward. And when we do have a vision, the only vision we have is calamity. The only thing we can see is everything that could potentially go wrong. And that's fair enough. That has to be part of it. But you cannot be dominated by fear. I'm sick of saying it. And it's every year, we're all repeating the same arguments because, but I have to say, I did think we'd moved away from this, the Mark Lowell one. For God's sake, how are we back in another transfer window, signing boys at $1 million and a half? And, get 10 of them in, hope 1 or 2 of them are good. It's deeply, deeply frustrating and deeply, deeply annoying and incredibly disappointing. Can I just point out one thing? Sorry, Paul John, slightly off tangent, but you were talking last week when I couldn't be with you about, the ownership of the company being dominated by Desmond, who shouldn't have that much influence. But again, and it's all these things, it's not about what you own, it's about what you control. And I was looking at the shares of the 4 main shareholders, and I just thought it was interesting because they're odd amounts. And I just thought it was interesting how you arrive at those odd amounts. So Dermot's got 34.7%, right? And that Lindsell Train strategic investment company, 18.6, Chris Trainer, 11.02, James Keane, 6.27. Now, interestingly, if you add Dermot, Chris Trainer, and James Keane, that's 51.97%.
There you go. Right over the threshold. Yep.
But why would your investment company come in at 18.6%? Because if you add their 18.6 plus 11.02 plus 6.27, that comes to 35.89, which is more than Dermot, right? So they're obviously looking at that, thinking, how do we have a position here in which we can exert some power and some influence? And they're thinking, we'll not change Dermot's mind, but what about these other 2 boys? If we get them on board, if we can move them when we want to move, we can outvote Dermot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and contrary to most people's belief, I think the fan shares only amount to about 15-20%. You know, so, you know, I heard someone saying it could be a fan-owned club, but that's not the case and never will be, but certainly as things stand. But that's how influence is exerted. That's why people have taken strategic positions, I think, the way they are, so that they can exert control. So, you know, you imagine there is, you know, people will have say of what goes on in the background there. It's not just Dermot, but Dermot obviously is cracking the whip on a daily basis, you know, because these like strategic investment companies couldn't give a monkey's what's happening other than, you know, what's the return?
Yeah.
What's the dividend? What's the return? Other than that, I don't care. The place could burn down. And the other 2 boys, you know, I believe are fans as well, but they're no mugs either. So, you know, they've taken a position which means that they're going to have, you know, like even the smallest one there, your man Keane, with that 6.27%. I mean, that could be the casting vote. They'll be casting votes. So, you know, he's still in a powerful position. So, yeah, it's just interesting what the dynamics are and who is exerting control and who is, and why Dermot has so much power. You know, because without the strategic investment company, the other 2 boys, you know, they can't do really anything against Dermot. So it's interesting.
It is. Yeah. It is. It's the people that you've got on side, John, in relation to that level of control, rather than controlling the club individually. But, you know, the one thing I'm going to say here is these concerns, these frustrations are real. So when we do a show like we did on Monday and we were talking about that very subject, John, in relation to the influence of Dermot Desmond at the football club and whether or not he is signing off deals or appointing managers, you know, you learn all these things after the event. Martin O'Neill talks about it. Dermot Desmond gave him the job. Brendan Rodgers got the job from Dermot Desmond. You know, these things are facts. It's not as though we're just gossiping or speculating. But unfortunately, a lot of people see all that as negativity. Monday's show was called Toxic, a vomit of toxicity. There you go. There's a T-shirt for Kev Graham. This is the kind of thing that you're up against constantly if you dare to criticise the football club. Now, listen, it doesn't mean to say that someone who doesn't criticise the club loves Celtic more than someone who does. It's just that we express it differently. This is a platform where feel free to come in and disagree. Absolutely feel free. But it's not toxic. And what Acsom's talking about in the here and now is real. We're trying to get into the Champions League, and I'm going to bring up a point here. And it's about maximising our ability within that competition. So when Danny Boy comes in, PSG are reportedly considering £200 million bid for Cole Palmer. Welcome to the reality of the Champions League. Yeah, there is an element. There is a group of clubs who will spend that kind of money. But Celtic, on the other end of the food chain, right, shouldn't be relying, and by the way, some of them will turn out to be good signings, shouldn't be relying on 250 grand players or 1.5 or 1.7 million pound players. If we can get some of that business, great, it's shrewd, it's brilliant, and we can maybe at some point in the future make a profit because that's part of the whole business strategy that we've got. But that should not be the market that we are aiming to bring the quality in from, as John Hughes says. That's no negative. You know, we have already, for me, last season, proven that we can compete to a level if we get in there and we're prepared enough and we've got enough quality. So we don't expect Patrick Celtic to probably ever spend £200 million on one player. We don't expect that.
Sorry,
Nobody
I hate to jump over, Patrick, as I always do, Patrick. Sorry, he's my weekly interruption. The first of them. But I can't believe we're having this conversation again. Oh, we can't compete in the Champions League. Or we can't spend money in the Champions League. Oh, it's toxic to talk about it. Well, I think it's toxic not to talk about it, because I think that means that you don't care. I think the people who care, and you can have different opinions on it. And I see someone else talking about a boycott there as well, and that's one of the things not worth talking about, because it'll never ever happen. All you have to do is if we said boycott on here, within 30 seconds there'd be half the comments would never do it, would never give up a season ticket, absolute nonsense, all the rest of it. It's never going to happen. Forget the boycott idea. That's not going to happen. So, but it's so frustrating that we're back here now saying we can't compete in the Champions League again, or how are we supposed to do that? We showed last year how you can do it.
Yeah.
And we showed last year how close we were. And if we progressed from there, that's baby steps. Nobody's saying we're going to win it. But every game that we win is worth a fortune to us. Most games that we win are worth more than winning a treble, right? And that's just winning a game, and to some degree, especially getting through. I mean, these are absolutely fortunes, which puts us in such a dominant financial position that would guarantee success for generations. So, no, we don't have to be spending £200 million a player. That's a nonsense. But we can spend £15 million a player, £10 million a player, £20 million on a player, because we've got the money. And that's we still don't have a net spend. We haven't for the last 15 years, since 2012, 2013. So the last 13 years, our average net spend is minus 5.6 million a year. That's our net spend, minus 5.6 million. So that's after we've got all the money back in. How much have we spent? Nothing, ever. Do you know what I mean? And in the modern era, we haven't spent a coin since they went under. So it's so frustrating. I'm so sorry, Patrick. I'll let you say
not at all. And John, what you say is right. It's not about shutting down anybody's opinion on this, right? But we were concerned for a long period of time. And I always bring up that comment that Ian Bankier made as chairman, Patrick, and then we pinpointed the wording of the chairman's statement, the financial statement last year, participating in the Champions League. And we were sitting here saying, no, we want to compete. Now, we don't mean compete to the point where we're competing with PSG. We know where we are in that, in respect to that. But compete insofar as looking at last season and saying, let's at least achieve what we did last year and maybe even push it that wee bit forward. Don't forget how close we were against Bayern Munich to taking them into extra time in that second game. Don't forget just how close we were. And even at that point, Patrick, we were doing so, having sold our best striker. I know how good Maeda played after Kyogo left. I get all that. But we'd sold and not replaced Kyogo. We'd gone down to try and sign Tierney and we signed Sloop instead. Rodgers was operating not at maximum force there, right? He would have had Tierney in the team and he would have had a centre forward in the team if he had his way, yet we still competed. And that's all we're asking for as Celtic supporters, is to compete. I feel as though there comes a point where those people making the decisions can take the operation so far, and it's as far as they can take it. And I'm starting to get that feeling, it's particularly when, you're hearing Brendan Rodgers and he's kind of talking your language to a degree. And he's doing it in a certain way, Patrick, so that he's not going full Terminado on us. He's not going to do that because he's definitely going to be here this season. He's not going to make sure that, he generates or negotiates a deal elsewhere. That's not going to happen this season. But what we were hoping as fans is for him to continue. So there is nothing wrong about talking about this, stripping it back and saying, is this the level of ambition that we should be showing? And that's a word used all the time by Brendan.
To be fair, his comments, they sort of a wee bit up and down, I thought, this week. I mean, he seemed sort of happy and jolly before that Ajax game, joking with Callum about, I think it was Rangers he was joking about, and how confident he was. And then after the defeat, obviously 5-1, it is a friendly, but a 5-1 defeat, and you're maybe wanting a few more players, and he said it's all about ambition, didn't he? I think it was on about how ambitious he wanted to be, and then again sort of coming back to the the original, we think we're going to get the deals done, one this week, a few more by the end of the window. It's comments have been quite sporadic in my opinion, but I definitely sort of sharing the feeling with the fans. I think where there is an acknowledgement that we've got a lot of business done. There is time left, but maybe time to quicken the pace because we've got a lot of important games. I think as well, I mean, no one's really expecting us to win the Champions League. I don't think. I mean, it would be like Leicester on steroids sort of thing, that sort of achievement in modern day football. No one's expecting us to spend 200 million on a player. I don't think anyone's expecting us to spend 200 million on a squad over the course of several windows. I don't think we're actually at that level. Probably just shy of that. But I mean, to look at
200
last
quid would
season
be
as
good.
an achievement, aye.
200 grand on a left back, John. There we go. I said the other day,
But,
Haaland's missus spent more on a handbag than we spent on a left back. All joking aside, Patrick, it's about, we know where we are, and it's about, right, we pushed the boat out last season, right? The 3 signings, and again, the discussions will rage on about where they're worth the money. That will rage on, and that's fine. But that's the level in terms of investment that we were expecting, I think, or hoping for this pre-season.
Yeah, and to define last season's achievements as well, I think going into this season, we all know we're almost certainly not going to get as lucky a draw as we did last season. We got a very beneficial draw last season, and so to get to the same stage as last season, we're in the playoff round in February and competing to get into that round of 16 spot. Because as much as it's Bayern Munich, we were minutes away from extra time, seconds away from extra time. From extra time, second leg, going into that round of 16 tie. So actually, depending on how the draw goes, I think it would be actually an achievement and maybe even a mark of progress to get to the exact same stage because the path there will be harder. So to get to that stage again, I think would be a tremendous achievement, especially when you've got a qualifier to begin with. But I mean, just on a sort of sobering sort of financial viewpoint, we are going to have to almost certainly play 3 qualifiers next season. We're probably going to have to play a good few qualifiers every single season, assuming we win the league to get into the Champions League. So, that pot of gold is further away of participation. So we need to take advantage of it while it's here this last season, where it's, relatively straightforward to get into. And I think that's his frustration. But, I was talking about this. I think I've been talking about it for months. I mean, if you prepare properly before these qualifiers and you push the boat out a wee bit and you act like a Champions League club before you get there to give yourself a better shot, even if you fall short, we seen a Philippe Clement Rangers team finish 8th in the Europa League phase last season, which meant that they skipped the playoff round. They were seeded in the round of 16 and they made it to the quarterfinals. Now there is no reason why Celtic cannot at least get to that stage in the Europa League. And you've seen what a poor Man United team done to Athletic Bilbao. I'd like to think on our day we could beat Man United. I like to think on our day we could beat Tottenham Hotspur with the state that they were in last year. So if we prepare properly and you've got like a sort of Basel 2002 result, you can actually go on and have a proper go at these lesser competitions if you don't get that pot of gold that is the Champions League. So I think it's just about preparing properly, and hopefully, we still get the time in this window. So hopefully we do that, and hopefully we can navigate the qualifier. But it's totally understandable and totally valid to have that angst and that worry at the moment. I don't think it makes you less of a fan. I don't think it makes you a vomit of toxicity or whatever the comment was on Monday. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's
Can't
just
wait to see that T-shirt.
understandable concern. One other thing, I wanted to mention. Nygren, we signed Nygren on the 27th of June. I think that was the only incoming business that we had before the 30th of June. Now, our financial results usually come out sort of mid to late September. It will be interesting to see how much cash we had in the bank on the 30th of June, because we've not actually done that much business in terms of value since then either. I mean, we've signed a bunch of players for relatively low value. So whatever that number comes out to be, cash in the bank come the financial report in September, I imagine we're probably still sitting in that at this moment in time. I know we're paying wages and stuff, but it should be very interesting to see that number come September.
Yeah, we're running with the tagline today of when will our world-class CEO step up and conclude some deals? And I think it's fair to ask that question. We were asking questions on Monday of Dermot Desmond, and we were looking at transfer targets yesterday, one of which looks to have been concluded today. Here's the words from Brendan Rodgers this morning. You want your team together as quick as you can, so you can get some good work in, get the togetherness, get the spirit, everything formed. Anybody who's a football fan or a football person, John, knows that. That's just the basics. You want your bodies in early so that you can integrate them into the squad. We even seen Greg Taylor being integrated into his new squad over in Greece. And that is so, so important. It seems to be missed by the board, unfortunately. And the CEO of the football club is now coming under intense scrutiny. There's a balance, there's a sweet spot to try and find, John, when it comes to a CEO who loves the sound of their own voice, constantly comes out in the media and makes statements every other week, versus the CEO that we find ourselves with at this moment in time, who I think, other than AGMs, etc., the public appearance of Michael Nicholson has probably been when Brendan Rodgers got the job back. I can't remember too much more than that. John, is that enough? Are we hearing enough from the CEO who coined the world class in every department phraseology, which I don't think he's living up to?
Well, I was wondering there when Michael Nicholson had been replaced, because you referred to our world class CEO. But yeah, I mean, certainly, and we're going back again to the point that I just started making. This transfer window, there was a minute there with Engels and Ida when it seemed that we would start buying potential. People are losing their mind there because I said 20 million quid. Doesn't matter, what it is. It's significantly more than we're paying just now. Call it between 10 and 20 million quid, which is what you're going to have to pay for better potential. I don't know how many times I've said that. You buy guys at potential, or they won't come. They will come because they're not going to be established players for the most part. There'll be guys who have got much higher potential than the ones that we have at the moment. You start buying your potential at a higher level and you kick on that way. That's what all the other clubs do. They're saying that we can't do it. That's what clubs in Portugal and Belgium, Greece and I don't know where else. That's what they do. I think we can manage it. I think we can buy guys in a wee bit more than we're normally prepared to pay. So it should be a base level like 5 million quid, and then 10 or 15 stretch out to get some young fella who has very, very, very high potential, a very, very, very high ceiling, not who's a punt. So that's the way that all the other clubs do it. This is not something unique to us. We're not suggesting reinventing the wheel. Look around Europe for clubs who are much smaller than us and much more successful at this. So all these comments about, they can't do it, they won't come, it's nonsense. That's not what we're suggesting. So you're not going to get a guy who might be valued at 20 million end up going for 30 million to someone else. Fine, that's fine, but that's not what we're talking about. So these models are available for everyone to view all over Europe. All we're suggesting is that we try and copy that in a more efficient, more professional way, and with systems in place which make that happen year on year. And what we have is a guy who appears to be focused on, absolute punts, and Brendan, who is not at all, despite what he's saying, he didn't know who these guys were, he didn't know Inamura, he obviously didn't know, obviously from what he said, I don't give a look at his comments, he'd never seen Inamura play, right? He signed it off, he'd never seen him play. How could you be surprised at the boy's passing? That's pretty much all he can do, according to his stats. That's what you've been looking at, and Yamada, we'll see what he does, we'll come in and assess him and all the rest of it. Is that what you say when you're bringing in a first-team starter? It's just, it is nonsense. That is not what we need to be happening. And we need everyone singing off the same hymn sheet. So if Tisdale isn't going to be bringing in the players for the first team, then, Brendan needs to be given leeway to bring in guys who are the correct quality. And he cannot have Dermot Desmond signing off every single signing that he makes, because he's not going to. And also, that just completely undermines the manager. The manager was appointed by the board, to do this job, and you're completely undermining him. What was his budget, by the way? because again, we're looking at, net so far, what we brought in, over 30 million this year, and we've spent, 2.5, something like that. So net, we could spend another 20 million and still not spend any money, still not take any money out the war chest, out the coffers. To suggest that this can't be done, that we are somehow incapable, is nonsense. It's people won't do it. That's what the issue is. So anyway, and again, someone's talking about boycotting merch. So Mick, I can see you there. Don't you shout. So you're talking about boycotting merch, wasting your breath. The same thing as I just said before. Who do you think? It doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what online. The majority of people don't live online, right? There's a lot, there's an online community, but the majority of people don't live online. You try and boycott the merch, 70% of the people will tell you to get jammed, and so it's not going to happen. By all means, if you want to try it, take placards to the game, try and get people involved in it, but it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, John. Just look at the Newcastle game, right? Boycotting a game because it's not a season ticket. Listen, 45,000 were there. It's not going to happen. There has to be a different approach. Change is inevitable, but it won't be through the level of change that we saw maybe in the early 90s. I found this quite interesting, John. You said how much we spent. The last time I calculated this, we were sitting 20 million quid up because of the Frimpong money as well that's coming. But we never spent anything other than compensation for Callum Osman. So what are you talking, 300 grand? Benjamin Negrin, 1.7 takes us up to 2 million. We've then got Inamura at 250, so that's 2.25. Shin Yamada 1.5, so 3.75 is how much money we have put out on incomings. And I found this quite funny because back in the day, back in the dark old days, and we put the video out on Friday night, brilliant content. If you've not seen it, archive content, go and have a watch. It's the Celts for Change movement, and it's guys like Joe Beltrami and Brian Dempsey with magnificent speeches that you might not have heard. And back in those days, it was as if we were always looking for something else the club was always looking for something else, be that a result or the change of a manager or a big signing, just to get the fans off their back. But in the pre-season of 91-92, which was Liam Brady's first season, John, we spent 3.295 million on players. We signed Cascarino and Gillespie and Mowbray for $1 million plus each. Gordon Marshall came in for 270 grand. So we've kind of regressed back to those levels. Well,
it's a good job there hasn't been any inflation since then in the game.
I know. Isn't it just? I don't know if that means we're skinflints now or we were kind of overspending back then. And I think, the answer to that is somewhere in between. I had said earlier, Joe McBride played for Luton. He did. You know who else played for Luton Town? Dixie Deans, who's 79 today. Celtic, after Celtic, he went to Luton Town and he played there for a season as well before. A couple of loan deals. Bertie Auld signed him for Partick Thistle on loan, John. I only recently found that out. There's a great picture of Bertie, probably with a cigar, because that's what he did when he was a manager, signing Dixie Deans on loan for Partick Thistle. And then he went and played a few years over in Australia, and it's in Australia that he met Bob Marley, and Bob Marley told him that he was a Celtic fan, and all that kind of legend was born. We are going to talk about other things, but in terms of the loans, we're obviously bringing in a Man City player on loan. Patrick, I'm having a wee look at some of the guys we've got out on loan at the moment, and it's something I mentioned in the group this morning. It sounds as though Stephen Welsh might be going to Plymouth Argyle, which is League One in England. So we're talking third tier English football. We had a loan deal at Mechelen last season. In his earlier part of his career, he had a spell at Morton when he was still a prospect. He's no longer a prospect. And you're looking at Welsh thinking, well, didn't we do that loan thing last season? Why another loan deal? It's like kicking the can down the road. So I had another look at some of the other guys out on loan. Navrosky and Holm are out for their first loan deals. Holmes will end at the end of this year. After that, you're kind of wondering if the permanent deal will occur. Palmer's now on his second loan deal. I've seen John Hughes got a quote in a Polish-speaking news outlet. John, it was quite an article actually. Quite a good article.
The boy went pretty in depth, but he got a lot of material. He got a lot of material from us. So all the opinions which he just he regurgitated online. So it looked like he'd done a huge amount of research, but actually it was all the contributions of the Acsom team that who took 5 or 10 minutes just to say their piece on Palmer. But it was very interesting. So it was comprehensive, because he then went to Greece and got their opinions as well about his period there, and he went to where he was before. So, they got a very, very decent look at what Palmer's strengths and weaknesses are. And I'll tell you something right now. I don't know why we're letting Palmer go, because he's pretty much, he would be the number 2 left winger, if he stayed on. So unless we are confident of getting people in, I don't know why we're letting him go. I mean, we're not. I mean, I was embarrassed, absolutely embarrassed, to read that we're keeping on Tilio and Yang, blocking them moving, because we don't know what our situation is with wingers. Tilio, I mean, you can make an argument for Yang, but the only way Tilio's tearing up trees is if he gets a side gig as a landscaper. So it's basically.
I don't think he's got the build for that, John. My beloved landscaper, I don't think Tilio would last half a shift.
Well, as I say, the thing about Tilio is, one of our best ever player was a wee guy. But if that's your physical disadvantages, you need to have jinky levels of skill or a gap levels of speed, right? He has neither, right? And the fact that we're holding on to that boy and preventing him moving on, when we all know he's not good enough, even he at this stage must know he's not good enough. It's embarrassing for the club, almost as embarrassing as all these reports. I mean, it really is embarrassing. We want to be taken seriously. Get in. Our guys are valued at 6, 7, 8 million, and we're starting bids 1.5. Now, look, I'm in sales. I understand the value of an anchor bid, right? I understand the value of putting something where you want to start from rather than where they want to start from. But it has to be within reason. You can't be 300% below the price. It's just it's madness, and and it just speaks to what's happening here. We don't have the right people in the right positions. It's as simple as that. And it has been that way now for years. We just don't have the right people behind the scenes, and that's what's driving this. Same again. And we come on here with all our hopes and ambitions, and at the start of the window, let's I'm really hoping we can do something. I mean, I had pretty high hopes. My expectations weren't high, but my hopes were, and I'm just at this point, you're just looking at this going, they could really, this could be another low thing. I do not. I don't think it's guaranteed that we get quality in at all in any way. We're not linked with some of the, we're not even linked with decent wingers apart from Big Balak Fewisha. So, apart from him, I don't think we've got anyone else.
That nickname's going to stick. That nickname's going to stick, John. A big winger, Balak Fewisha, right? No, but on the Palmer thing, I was misquoted on one part of it where they say that I called Yang Younger, and I know that that's not his name, right? His name's Yang, absolutely. The other guy's Monty, Adam Montgomery. 6 loan deals, Patrick. 6 loan deals, 23 years of age. And I know that injuries kind of played its part with Adam Montgomery, but I'm looking at these guys, I'm thinking, right, why are we loaning out the likes of Stephen Welsh? Why are we loaning out Montgomery? I can get the understanding with Novroski. He needs to prove to somebody that he can play after a long period of time, 2 years with no much football. Palmer, again, you would kind of hope that would be a permanent deal, but, we're going to have to wait another year for it. That's the difficulty as well, handing out these big contracts, isn't it? Because, I mean, we're still, that's penance for the summer transfer window 2 seasons ago.
It is. And I think the harsh reality is that it's just a case of no one is coming in for these players. No one's willing to pay any money. I mean, it's been a good few years since Welsh has had a sort of decent one in the team. I thought he showed a bit of talent, a bit of promise sort of during COVID and maybe under Ange the first sort of 18 months. But, I mean, you're talking a long time ago since he's played regularly for Celtic. So I think, obviously, the time is done and it probably has been done for a while. best for all parties to move on. I remember, in fact, under Ange, while he was sort of still getting a game, Udinese were constantly coming in from, and we knocked it back. Same as Tillio, really. We didn't have the cover. We didn't have the players in to sort of say yes to that deal. And now, I don't know when his contract ends. I imagine it's a year or two from now. It's probably going to run out while he's on loan or something, a bit like Schlupp in Crystal Palace. Montgomery, I thought he showed promise. Didn't play as many minutes as Welsh did for Celtic. Thought he was a really good attacking player. Don't know if he was really tested defensively, but I don't think he's going to get in the team. I mean, if we're buying a guy from Japan for 250 grand and shipping him out on loan, Montgomery, he's not going to have a Celtic career. I think, to be fair, his career's been totally plagued by injuries up until this point. I think he was out for over a year before he went to Queen's Park. I'm sure his Aberdeen loan move was cut short. I think Fleetwood, I don't know if it was because Brown got the sack or he got another injury, but totally plagued by injuries. So I think the harsh reality is, this is us putting them in the shop window. I think we farmed out Palmer to put him in the shop window. It didn't work. We're trying it again. I'll disagree with John. I thought Palmer was so bad. I don't think he gets near the team. I would play a youth player. Another youth player that I've never heard of. Palmer was given a chance against Falkirk in the League Cup, I think in September. Couldn't beat his man. Couldn't beat his man against that Championship Falkirk side. So, his chance at Celtic is done as far as I'm concerned. So quite right to try and get rid of these guys. But it's like chickens coming home to roost, really, from that window over 2 years ago now, where we signed all these guys off. By all accounts, Brendan hadn't watched a single one of them. He just sort of put his trust in Mark Lawwell, and they were still trying to get rid of some of these guys. To be fair, we have get rid of a lot of players this window that weren't going to get used. Scott Bain sort of started the exodus. You've seen Lagerbielke go out. You've seen Nawrocki go out loan, but I think that'll be permanent. And you've seen a whole host of others.
Kwon.
But
Don't forget Kwon.
Kwon, that broke live, wasn't it? Last Wednesday we were live talking about that. What a performance he put in against Bilbao in that friendly 2 years ago. I think it was a record 13 times he passed it out of the park or something. A real sensational signing. God knows how you go from failing at St Mirren and Hibs to a move to League One, but there you go.
I was absolutely stunned by that.
We need to get his agent in charge of the sales for the rest of these guys. Get Welsh, Montgomery, Palmer, get them all moved.
Not a decent team, aren't they? Not still a decent team. I thought they used to. They certainly used to be.
Yeah,
that's bizarre.
It was a surprise, but fair play to him. Fair play to Kwon. The Stephen Welsh one, for me, I'm just checking his contract there. Although he's listed as expiring on the 31st of May 2027, sometimes that means that's including the 1 year option that the club has after his deal expires. But I was just looking at some of that interest. You mentioned earlier on there about Udinese. Prior to that, Toulouse were interested in Stephen Welsh back in 2022, this time during the summer transfer window 2022, they actually had an offer of £3 million knocked back by the club, and that was 3 years ago. And then fast forward to the interest. In fact, Udinese were interested in the January of a loan deal for the Stephen Welsh, and then in 2024, this time last year, the chat was that English clubs and MLS sides were interested in him. And now he has the prospect of going to Plymouth Argyle. Nothing against Plymouth, by the way, because obviously we've got Keith Oakton who listens to this show and he lives down there. But going for like Serie A interest and MLS interest, Ligue 1 interest to Plymouth Argyle, it just also shows you, John, sometimes players can let these moves go by and they never come back. And I can understand sometimes why young players grasp it when the opportunity arises. Welsh must be looking at that and thinking, wait a minute, from Mechelen to Plymouth Argyle.
Yeah, no, it does, you wonder then how difficult it is for them, because they must realise that when these opportunities come, they might never come again. And that could be because of injury, because of form, just because of the machinations of the club moving people in and out. When they do want to get rid of you, there might be no one interested. So it's very difficult to, look at potentially a life in Ligue 1 in France, or going down to Plymouth. No harm to Plymouth, but I suspect Plymouth is about as bleak and grey as you can be in England. So
Keith Oakton always tells us when it's sunny, though, John. Always comes in and tells us when the sun's out.
But no harm to Plymouth. But you get the point. I mean, it's a big, it's a big move down. So, look, I mean, what's happened there is, again, with these young boys, is their contracts are long because of that transfer window. We can't get short of them for the wages. No one else wants to take them on. Same with Welsh, all the rest of it. So those are the risks you take when, I mean, there was a period there when we were signing, everyone we were signing was getting a 5-year deal, which initially you're sort of thinking, oh, that could be good in terms of, obviously making sure that we get paid. But when you're making those deals, you have to be cognizant, and I'm sure they have already worked out that the downside of those deals is something that they can afford. The downside of those deals is something they can manage by putting guys out on loan and getting most of their wages covered. But the upside is making sure that for anyone that's a success, that they're tied in for as long as we need them to be to make a significant profit. So, yes, it seems it's unfortunate we have guys in that situation because it means realistically they're not going to make it. But, I think there's been an assessment there, as I say, that the downside is something the club can afford and the club can manage. But the potential upsides were far higher. So, that's to me, that's fair enough. But I mean, they shouldn't necessarily be knocking around in pre-season. They shouldn't necessarily be knocking around the first team beyond the point of a few games to see whether has there been any significant improvement. And even then, pre-season's not necessarily going to tell you that. They should have extensive scouting reports from the season that they're out on loan to see exactly what standard they're at. I don't know if that's happening or not, but you would assume it has to be. So, they come back with very little chance of making it, I assume, unless they've absolutely had stellar season somewhere else, and we would know if they had because the coverage would have followed them.
No, you're absolutely right. By the way, talking about moving on, I've got to give a big shout out to James McKenzie. James McKenzie, you have seen on A Celtic State of Mind since the sprightly age of 16. We've seen him growing mullets. We've seen him cutting it off. We've seen him cutting his teeth in the world of media, and he's got a new job. So he's away to work for Sky Sports. I know it's a step down for Acsom, but well done. Well done, James McKenzie. Congratulations, young man.
That's fantastic. What's he doing for Sky? That's brilliant.
Apparently, he's like the Scott Bain. He brings the kids. He drives the cars. No, he'll be involved. He'll be involved in production. Aye, very, very
absolutely brilliant.
Very chuffed.
Fantastic.
Aye, brilliant, fantastic. Well done, James, and hopefully we'll see you again. I know that he's interested in other sports as well. I think tennis is one of his big things, and probably wrestling when you look at that mullet. But football's obviously his first love. And all joking aside, all the very best, young man. Right, Michael Mullen. Here we go. Is this start time late? My lunch break will end soon. Sorry, Michael. We do start at 12:30 every weekday. Maybe you're new to the show, and if you are, welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. You came in with a good question. Do you think the board read or listen to fan media? Every transfer window is so frustrating. Well, again, this is another thing, the issue with the communicating with fans. It's not their best. For me, it's not their best talent, their best skill. Do they listen to fan media? Yes, they do, because they let us know when they're not happy with something that we've said. And in terms of our access, another one that I found quite funny was yesterday, somebody on X said, Acsom will never question the club because we're too close to them. We're in bed with the club. All right, maybe you should tell them that. Maybe you should tell them that. We're in bed with a football club. No, we do get invites. They are pretty sporadic. We do get invites for press conferences. We've not had any kind of schedule for this year, so I'm not quite sure in terms of our involvement with press conferences, what's going to happen this year. We are going to try and chase that up. But they do watch because from time to time they will get in touch. Craig, 1977, deal for Poussey now. concluded he joins Celtic. Yeah, so we're reckoning then, guys. Stephen Welsh obviously going to Plymouth Argyle. Will we run with a 5? Because we have, in the last few seasons, we have had central defensive issues with injuries. Do you run with a 5? And you've got, obviously, Trusty and Scales. You have CCV and Murray. And then, obviously, we've got our new arrival. You happy with that, Patrick?
Yeah, I'd like to wait and see the quality of this new boy that coming in. I'd like to see how Trusty fares as well, because I think, he started a bit shaky, has that game in Atalanta, goes on a wee run, and then I think it's the cup final and then the Dundee game as well. Absolute, disaster, basically. And then you don't really see him in the second half of the season. But he's been at the club a year now. He's done well in the friendly games that he's played. So interesting to see how he performs. Scales, decent option. Quite happy to see him in a Celtic shirt, but not happy to see him as the first choice. I don't think he's good enough. He's been near enough first choice for 2 years, and I'm pretty certain of that opinion, that he's not good enough to be a starter for where we want to be. And then we'll see what this new guy comes in with. And Dane Murray, I mean, he's sort of had he's had up and down moments, but I think he's a half decent centre half, and he's young enough that he can still make it. Welsh, I think Welsh is 25 or 26 now, so I mean, not a young player. But I think Dane Murray, there's still that, maybe not hit his ceiling yet, and he could still make himself a career at Celtic. So provisionally quite happy with that. Interesting to see how it plays out and how they perform. But we've certainly got the numbers in. We all wanted a centre half. We all needed a centre half. I can't see us signing another one. Put it that way. I mean, we've essentially got 5 options, so we're not going to sign another. So we'll just need to roll with it for this season. But I'm fairly content. I think I want to see Trusty starting that role, because we did spend 6 million on him. He's had an up and down time, but hopefully he can kick on now, and then we'll see the talent of this new boy from Man City. And I don't think we've got an option to buy, but maybe if it comes to the end of the season, we can renegotiate and try and sign him on a permanent.
Yeah, you just never know. That's the thing. It doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to buy him. That's the big thing about the player. Things change, management can change, etc., and opinions on players can change as well. John, when we're looking at the team for Sunday, I think one of the biggest concerns is that front line, front three. Who plays on the wings and who plays up top for you?
Well, for me, it would be probably, you'd have to go Yang on the right. I would start Yamada and Maeda on the left. I don't think he'd has shown anything really pre-season, rather worryingly. And I think Yamada's going to come in and be clear first choice. That's of course based on the full 30 minutes that we saw him for, 40 minutes that we saw him for. But it was, to me, just his record and his speed and his movement and the way he reacted to that goal that he didn't get, that sort of thing, with better players around him, I think he'll do well. I would be very concerned about Ida. I think the midfield, again, we have our front line, as it were, in terms of our first choice squad, first choice 11 could be really pretty decent. But we've also seen what happens when it's not working at different points in the season, and you need game changers to come on off the bench. You need people who bring something different, or bring more energy or higher quality or a different approach, more creativity, more physicality. You need something coming off the bench. And as it stands at the moment, I don't think we've got anything of any note whatsoever. I think, Nigrin, Hatate, Kalmai, decent enough. Back four, probably decent enough. And the front line minus Yang, decent enough, but not. There's nothing beyond that. That's really for all the work needs to be done, and they are. The majority, you're saying sort of decent enough. We're not talking world beaters here. It's going to be interesting to see now in the next few weeks exactly what does happen. But I mean, I just wish we could have some serious quality added prior to that Champions League qualifier, because it's such an important game. It's absolutely, fundamental to our season. Will dictate what happens in the next couple of seasons, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Because we've got multiple qualifiers next year, and we're going to need serious money invested to get through multiple qualifiers. And we're not going to have that serious money unless we get through this qualifier. So I just think it's such a risk to be leaving things late. If you have to pay $1 million or $2 million over the odds, just pay it. Just pay it and go on with it. We need this game. You'll get it back, in the Champions League. So, I don't understand, as I say, the nickel and diamond and that sort of attitude. It's just beyond me. But it's been beyond me now for years. I think it's beyond the majority of the fans for a long time. I was hoping something would be different, but it doesn't appear that's the case.
No, I mean, in terms of timeline, I was reading this morning, the Champions League draw actually is on Monday. It's on Monday, right? So if that's the case, we'll cover it. It's 8:30, even if I just bounce on myself for the draw. The games will be played on the 19th or 20th of August, and then the 26th and 27th of August. But as John's already said, in terms of the squad being registered, that's the 14th of August, and you're able to add another couple of players right up to the first game. So, yeah, time is running out, no doubt about it. What's your take on it then, looking up top? I mean, Brendan Rodgers, and a lot of people say, I'm not interested in pre-season. It doesn't mean anything. Actually, if you look at Brendan's first season, pre-season meant that Rio Atati didn't start the first game because he didn't impress him in pre-season, and he ended up starting David Turnbull. Now, on that basis, I can see where John's coming from when it comes to Ida, because Ida has not impressed during the pre-season. Does he start for you? Do you throw Yamada right in, Patrick?
Unsure. I know he ran with Turnbull because Rio didn't impress, but within a couple of games, Turnbull was quickly bombed and then sold in January. So, I mean, you could see either. I would go with Shin. I don't think Ida's done anything to impress me of late. I'm trying to think he had a lot of big moments in his first 6 months, but last season, but 20 goals off the bench is decent. But just watching him, you were underwhelmed. So I wouldn't go with Ida unless he's making some sort of show of him to say, right, you're getting sold in January. But I don't think he'll do that. I think he'll go with Shin. And I've seen a few comments saying Shin was meant to be the Kyogo replacement, and we couldn't quite get it over the line. I've not heard that, but hopefully that's true. Because if he's anything like Kyogo, hopefully he can score a few goals for us. So I think he'll go with Shin.
Yeah, well, let's have a wee look on Sunday. We'll be covering the game as always. We also have a fan zone at Barra's Art and Design. For anyone who can't get a ticket, come down to Barra's Art and Design, and we will be covering the game with live music there as well. Last word on the subject by the vomit of toxicity that is Kevin Graham. Not my words, Kev. Not my words. Well done, James. There is talent in my family. Well, it was Kev that introduced me to James Mackenzie because it's his nephew. And you're absolutely right. James is a talented boy, so well done to him as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved today. We had 2,000 on the live. There is frustrations, there's concerns, and hopefully by the end of today, there'll be a new signing, rather. Thanks, everybody. Continue to get involved. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and join us again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.
Hell.